Hello everyone. This is Professor Amar Bakodi from Department of Civil Engineering, Angadi Institute of Technology and Management. So today we are going to study about the reverse osmosis and the nanofiltration of the subject Water Supply and Treatment Engineering Module 4. Introduction. Generally, there are four types of membrane processes which are available. So the first one is microfiltration, second ultrafiltration, third one is nanofiltration, and the fourth one is reverse osmosis. So basically for your syllabus, we are going to concentrate more on these nanofiltration and the reverse osmosis. Let us start with the reverse osmosis process. So osmosis is a naturally occurring phenomena and one of the most important process in nature. It is a process where a weaker saline solution will tend to migrate to a strong saline solution. A solution that is less concentrated will have a natural tendency to migrate to a solution with a higher concentration. A semi-permeable membrane is a membrane that will allow some atoms or molecules to pass through but not others. For example, a screen door. It allows air molecules to pass through but not insects or anything larger than the holes of the screen door. So basically in this what we are going to discuss over here is regarding the osmosis. It is not reverse osmosis. So first let us understand what do you mean by osmosis process. The first thing is it is a naturally occurring phenomenon. So here what is happening, always the solution will have a tendency to move from less concentration to the higher concentration. So the same thing can be visualized with the help of this figure. So here you can check it out. We have fresh water on half side and half portion will be of a salted. Here you can call it as a polluted water in simple terms. Okay. So here what I am doing, I am putting some pressure on the fresh water. So the flow of water in this direction. So here what is happening? Here the amount of pollutants is less. Okay. So the same thing is being passed on to the higher concentration pollutants. So through this membrane, basically a fixed size or fixed what can I say? Basically, yeah, size of the particles itself will be allowed to pass through this, whereas the remaining will be held up over here itself. So basically, this is what your general osmosis process which is there. Okay, and the simple example what he has given over here is a screen door, okay, or a mesh door. So in this mesh door what will happen, you will let in all the air as well as light which is available, but if you will not allow anything insects, that is if the size of that object is more than the size of the screen or the size of the holes of that screen, then it will not be allowed. So in osmosis the same process is going to occur over here. Now, reverse osmosis. So it is commonly referred to as RO. It is a process where you demineralize or deionize water by pushing it under pressure through a semi-permeable reverse osmosis membrane. The osmosis occurs naturally without energy. To reverse the process of osmosis, you need to apply energy to move to the more saline solution. That is, if it is a osmosis process, there is no need for you to apply any additional pressure. If you want to change that, or else if you want to reverse the naturally occurring process, at that point of time you need to apply the pressure on one side so that the osmosis process or else this natural process will be reversed. A reverse osmosis membrane is a semi-permeable membrane that allows the passage of water molecules but not the majority of dissolved solids, organics, bacteria and pathogens. So that is, if the dissolved salts, organics, bacteria and pathogens, if these are above or else these have more size than this semi-permeable membrane which is being used over here, then those things will not be allowed to pass through that. Basically, this is how even the reverse osmosis works. However, you need to push the water through the reverse osmosis membrane by applying pressure that is greater than the naturally occurring osmotic pressure. So in the previous slide you can see the since the water was there which was less pollutant, so its tendency is to move to the higher pollutant. So right now here what I am doing, I am applying the pressure to this salt water, so indicating I am applying pressure to the contaminated water over here which is containing more quantity of contaminants. So these contaminants may be dissolved salts, organics, bacteria, or even the pathogens. So I am applying the pressure over here so that against that natural process I am allowing the water to flow in the opposite direction, where so most of the contaminants will be held up here and only the clean water will be taken to the other side. So that is what is being mentioned over here. When the pressure is applied to the concentrated solution, the water molecules are forced through the semi-permeable membrane and the contaminants are not allowed to do so. That is, if the size of these contaminants are more than the size of pores which are available in this semi-permeable membrane, then those things will be held up on the left hand side, and in turn only the clear water will be there on the right hand side. Reverse osmosis works by using a high pressure pump to increase the pressure on the salt side of the RO and force the water across the semi-permeable membrane, leaving almost leaving almost all of the dissolved salts behind in the reject stream. The desalinated water, that is demineralized or deionized, is called as permeate or the product of water. The water stream that carries the concentrated contaminants that did not pass through the RO membrane is called reject or the concentrate stream. This is important to understand that an RO system employs cross filtration rather than a standard filtration where the contaminants are collected within the filter media. With cross filtration, the solution passes through filter or crosses the filter in two outlets. The filtered water go one way and the contaminated water goes another way. So let us see what all things are given over here. So if you check out, yeah. So this reverse osmosis uses high pressure pump to increase the pressure on the salt side of that. So as we have discussed in the previous slide with that figure, so there it increases the pressure, because of which the water will move towards the you can yeah. So salt side it will be pressurized, so it will move to the fresh water side, which will be there. And as and when this process happens, so around 95 to 99% of all the unwanted things will be left behind in this contaminated zone. Okay, only the clearer water will be passed over here. The desalinated water or demineralized water or deionized water, we call it as permeate or the product. So whatever the water we are getting over here, whatever the water we are getting on this side, you are going to call that as a product or a permeate. Okay, so similarly, next one, the water stream that carries the concentrated contaminants that did not pass through the RO membrane is called reject, right? So on this side, whichever water is still going to remain with the contaminants, that is going to be called as reject. Okay, so here these two kind of end products are going to be there for a reverse osmosis process. So that's why in the fourth point what he has mentioned is, it is important to understand that the RO system employs cross filtration. So cross filtration is what? So in conventional filtration, what will happen? Imagine this. Here you have raw water and here you have treated water. Imagine that. So at that point of time, what is happening? Uh, Imagine this contains some amount of, let us say, suspended particles or any of the contaminants. Okay, what that will happen when this pass through this filter? For example, you can imagine this as a cloth. Okay, filter cloth. So as and when that happens, so the entire water which is available on this side will be passing through the other side. So on this cloth, only these suspended particles will be remaining. So this is what your conventional filtration which is happening. Whereas in reverse osmosis, it is not this conventional filtration which is happening, it is the cross filtration which is happening. So what do you mean by this cross filtration? You can check out here, we have feed water, then we have pump, and here whenever I do that, so here I have two outlets. So instead of a single outlet like this in a standard conventional filtration, I have two one. So first one is this permeate water is nothing but what? Your filtered water. In simple term, you can call that as filtered water. Okay, whereas the remaining concentrated one, what I have shown over here in the top left, so the same thing is nothing but it is coming down over here, so that is what you are going to call it as reject stream. So in simplest of term I can explain is it will act as your like your aquaguard. So you can check out, you have your raw water supply for the aquaguard, then you will have one outlet where you are going to store that filtered water, and one more outlet where you are going to reject that water. Okay, similarly here also the same thing is there, one is your filtered water and one more is you have your rejected stream. So that is what is being told in the last point. With cross filtration, the solution passes through the filter or crosses the filter with two outlets. Two outlets is, one is this and one is reject. The filter water goes to the one way and contaminated water goes the another way. This is what the cross filtration actually means over here, and this is how the reverse osmosis works. Now, reverse osmosis is capable of removing up to more than 99% of the dissolved salts, ions. Just a minute. Okay. So, reverse osmosis is capable of removing up to more than 99% of the dissolved salts, that is ions, particles, colloids, organics, bacteria and pathogen from the feed water. So, you can see the amount of efficiency with which what we are going to get with the reverse osmosis is quite high. An RO membrane rejects contaminants based on their size and charge. So as previously discussed, based on the pore size of that particular membrane, you are going to differentiate what all things will be segregated and not. And similarly, it depends on the charge of that particle. Any contaminant that has a molecular weight greater than 200 Dalton or gram per mole, what we call it, is likely to be rejected by a properly running RO system. Likewise, the greater the ionic charge on the contaminant, it is more likely it will be unable to pass through the RO membrane. That is, if you have more charge, then that charge will be neutralized or it will be held up by the membrane, and in turn it will not be allowed to pass through. So here the size what I am mentioning, so basically 200 Dalton is the maximum size through which means beyond which the movement of those particular particles will be restricted. This is why an RO system does not remove gases such as carbon dioxide very well, because they are not highly ionized and they have a very low molecular weight. That is, the size of those particles or the atoms of those carbon dioxide will be very less, because of which that cannot be removed, and even the ionic charge on that carbon dioxide will be very less. So that's why RO systems are not suitable in removing the carbon dioxide out of the water. Reverse osmosis is very effective in treating brackish surface and groundwater for large and small flow applications. That is, this reverse osmosis can be used for treating brackish in the sense it is what I can say slightly saline. It will not like completely seawater, but you can call it as a slightly saline water, surface or groundwater. So all these three things can be treated for large and small flow applications with the help of reverse osmosis. Factors affecting the reverse osmosis. First one, influent solute concentration. That is, the amount of contaminants or the contaminant concentration in that water is going to be the primary factor. Next is water flux rate. So water flux rate is nothing but your flow rate. In simplest of term, you can call it as a flow rate of water. Third is pressure caused by the difference in solute concentration between the two compartments. That is, if I just draw this once again, yeah, so by default if I don't apply any of the water, imagine this, here is our membrane. Okay, so here is, let us say this is fresh water, okay, this is salt water, so I have fresh water here, fine, and here let us say I have this contaminated water. So if I am not applying any pressure right now, so naturally whatever the atmospheric pressure is there, that is there. So because of which what will happen, there exists a potential or else a pressure difference between both these ends. Okay, so how much is already existing, how much that particular pressure difference is naturally existing, even that is going to become a part of this factor that will affect the reverse osmosis process. The externally applied pressure, so that is the second one. So how much is naturally available is one thing, how much additional pressure you are going to apply is going to be the second thing. And for reference, for fresh and brackish water, the pressure application will be around 15.5 to 26 bar. Till that your reverse osmosis is going to work. And for sea water, where the concentration of dissolved solids will be quite high, so at that point of time this pressure difference can be up to 55 to 81.5 bars. Disadvantages of reverse osmosis. So household reverse osmosis units are a lot of use a lot of water because they have low back pressure. So this is the first disadvantage. What do you mean by that is, since we are going to use these household what I can say aquaguards, so there the pressure head on that particular inlet will be quite less, because initially if you check out, you have one pre-filter applied. So raw water will be given to this pre-filter. After the effluent of this pre-filter will be going into your system. Okay, so whenever this pre-filter is there, what it is going to do is, it is actually going to add up with the your entire treatment process. So because of that, what will happen, your pressure head of the inflow will be very less. So as and when the pressure is very less, obviously the amount of filtration that is going to occur is going to be less. So that's why they use lot of water, or else they waste a lot of water. So as a result, they recover only 5 to 15 percentage of the water entering in the system, and the remainder water is wastewater. So you can check it out. For every 100 liters of raw water used, only 5 to 15 liters of water will be filtered, whereas the remaining water will be taken out as a wastewater. An RO unit delivering 5 gallons of treated water per day may discharge 40 to 90 gallons of water, wastewater per day to the septic system. That is, you can check out. So basically the percentage of efficiency here is very less, even though the percentage of contaminant removal is quite high. As we have discussed, it is more than 99%. But whereas in a particular quantum of water, how much is being taken as a treated water and how much is being thrown out as a reject is very high. Large scale industries or municipal system have a production efficiency of closer to 48%, because they can generate high pressure needed for the RO filtration. So here in simplest of term, if I need to say, if you provide let us say okay, let us take this only example. Here I have my membrane. So as and when I apply more pressure, so that much efficiency I am going to get it over here. So unfortunately, in regular household RO systems, the pressure itself will be very less. So that's why the quantum of passage is also very less. So that's why you are having only 5 to 15 percentage of efficiency over here. But whereas if you go for the large scale implementation of RO systems, which are locally available now in many of the towns and villages, there what they do, the inflow pressure they are keeping it high, so that the quantum of water that is being passed through this membrane will be high. In turn, your efficiency will be what? Closer to 48%. Nanofiltration. So during 1970s, RO membranes with greater operating pressures were developed. Thus, this resulted in considerable increase in the energy cost. So this energy cost has been increased because you need to operate under high pressure, and to maintain this high pressure you need more energy. Thus, the low pressure RO membranes were developed and came to be known as nanomembranes. By the second half of 1980s, nanofiltration has become established. Starting in the early 1990s, it has become common and various applications for the same have been found out. Different polymers are used, such as polyether sulfone, polysulfone, polyphenyl sulfone, polytetrafluoroethylene, polyvinyldehyde fluoride, polycryonitrate, nylon, polypropylene, cellulose, acetate, regenerated cellulose, composites, ceramic, sintered metals, and carbon nanotubes. So here sintered metals are nothing but burnt metals, or else utilized metals can be used as a what I can say different polymers that can be used for the nano filtration. There are two types of membranes over here. So first one is spiral membrane and the second one is tubular membrane. Spiral membrane. So you can check it out. So these spiral membranes will be something similar to a sheet, okay, where your particular passage of water will be there and it will pass through the another side. So these are quite cheap, but these are more sensitive to pollution. That is, you cannot have much of a concentrated water passing through these membranes. Okay. Similarly, we have something called as tubular membranes, where these are not that effective to the pollution. That is, you can have varying what I can say concentration of inflow over here, but it can easily treat all those variations with the tubular membrane. Surface area of spiral membranes is greater than that of the tubular membranes and hence greater capacity. So here please try to understand this. The capacity is greater, but the rate of filtration is going to remain same. Two different things what you need to understand. First is rate of filtration. So if you check out 1 square meter of area, whether it is for tubular membrane or for the spiral membrane, so both the things amount of passage is going to remain same. The reason being because they have the same amount of pores. But when you consider the surface area of these, so spiral membrane will have more surface area. It will be like a thin sheet, so that's why it will have more surface area, because of which what will happen, the total quantity of filtration that will be happening through spiral membrane will be much more than the tubular membrane what we are going to have. And because of this higher sensitivity or else single layer of this particular membrane, here you cannot have varying dosage of inflow characteristics. You need to maintain it within limits so that the treatment can occur. Whereas the tubular membrane, even though the inflow characteristics are varying, it can easily take care of those variations. The pore size of a filter's membrane corresponds to a molecular weight cutoff of 300 to 500 gram per mole. Hence, separation of these components from higher molecular weight components can be achieved. Nanofiltration membranes have a slightly charged surface. The dimension of the pores are close to the dimension of the ions and hence charge interaction takes place. It can be used to separate ions from different valencies. So here you can check out. So here also the pore size usually will be 300 to 500 gram per mole or Dalton, what we have previously used for the reverse osmosis, right? Now nanofiltration membranes are slightly charged surfaces and the dimension of these pores are close to the dimension of the ions and hence these charge interactions can take place. Okay, so that's why it can be used to separate ions with different valencies. Applications. The industrial applications include food, dairy sector, edible oil processing sector, petroleum industry, drug industry, paper and pulp industry. Next, we can use it in water treatment, we can use it in desalination of water, and also we can use them in water softening process. Benefits of nanofiltration. So first of all, it is low cost operation. It requires low energy. High energy is basically what for the reverse osmosis we require, but for nanofiltration it will be of low energy. Similarly, we have lower discharge and less wastage than the typical reverse osmosis system. Okay, a reduction of heavy metals, it removes up to 95% of heavy metals because of that pore size what we have discussed. Reduction in water hardness, that can be achieved. Reduction or removal of viruses, bacteria and pesticides. So basically whatever removal we are talking here, even the next one, reduction in nitrates and sulfide, reduction in salt contents or in brackish water. So basically all these reductions are based on the size and charge of those particles. So if a molecule is having that size of 200 to 500 gram per mole, if the size is more than that, then obviously we can restrict those contaminants, whether they are in the suspended or dissolved form, that can be removed from these particular nano filters. Next we have chemical free filtration, that is no use of salt or we are not adding anything, it is purely on its own filtration what is happening. pH of the water can be altered for better health, so even that can be done. Ideal for municipal water supply, well water, river and rainwater. So it can be used for any of these water treatment sources. Removes iron, lime and other problem causing chemicals often neglected by water softeners. So even it will provide you much more solution than the water softening techniques what we have. So these are the benefits or advantages of nano filtration. Now the disadvantages of nanofiltration. The first one is membrane fouling. So what do you mean by this is, if the concentration of inflow is more, then obviously the membrane is going to get clogged, and because of that we call that as membrane fouling. So obviously as and when the concentration of the inflow is more, then your membrane fouling is going to be much more frequent. Next one, you have insufficient separation. That is, if the concentration or else that particular size of the contaminants are less than the size of the pore, then your amount of separation that you are going to observe over here will be less. Third one, treatment of concentrates. So again, that will become difficult if the concentration is quite high. The same interrelation what we had in the first 2 points. Next, we have membrane lifetime and chemical resistance. That is, so here the life of the membrane, till what time or what duration you can use those membranes, is going to be one factor. And apart from that, what happens if the chemicals are reactive chemicals are present in the water for its treatment, then again that may react with the membrane, and in turn it may cause some operational troubles. Last one is insufficient resections for individual components. That is, if you want to use nanofiltration for specifically removing a particular contaminant or component, then the efficiency may not be that high. So if you want to do that, then you need to perfectly have the approximation of the size of those particular contaminants in the dissolved form, and based on that we can go ahead with the nanofiltration process. Now, so in today's class, let us see what all things we have covered up. So in module 4, so we have done with your reverse osmosis and nanofiltration, right? So basic principles of working we have checked out. Flux is nothing but the rate of flow, what we have discussed. Next we have salt passage. So salt passage is nothing but the how this particular movement of contaminants from concentrated to clearer water will takes place. Next is rejection. Rejection is nothing but the cross filtration, in that what we have discussed. So that is nothing but the rejection, that is the water which is being rejected. And then concentration polarization. So concentration polarization is nothing but how much quantity of water is being utilized and how much contaminant concentration is still remaining in that water. So overview of RO and nanofiltration membranes have been done in this particular class. Yeah, conventional pre-treatment techniques for RO and nanofiltration. So again, these basically will end up with our relation with our second module. So in our second module, we have checked out regarding a typical treatment plant, how it should be, right? So with all these principle of working and actual practical treatment units, what we are going to use for removal of all these dissolved impurities which are there. So whether it is softening, whether it is disinfection, whether it is this nanofiltration, whether it is reverse osmosis. So basically with all these, what we are trying to do is we are trying to get rid of the dissolved contaminants which are there, which are quite difficult to see as well as remove. So conventional pre-treatment techniques for nanofiltration and RO filtration, basically it means that what all pre-requirement are there before you go for the particular RO or nanofiltration. So basically, if I need to tell you, since these are quite sensitive and these work on the principle of your membranes, what we require is conventional pre-treatment. What they have told over here, it actually means that, so you need to make sure that there are no suspended particles in this water, or else the inflow for these particular treatment, whether it is RO or nanofiltration. So in the primary treatment unit, basically what we think of removing all the inorganic or suspended matter which is going to be removed. So your RO or nanofiltration in a conventional treatment plant, if you want to adopt it, then you need to make sure that you have already completed the primary treatment, and there you have taken sufficient care to remove all the suspended matter, whether it is organic or inorganic. So suspended particles are properly removed over there. So if it is there, then only this last point will be covered. Okay, so that is what this conventional pre-treatment techniques for RO and nanofiltration means to you, right? Thank you.